Thank you. So for small businesses, SMEs, and actually this also relates to levy paying companies as well. So any employer taking on either a 16 to 18-year-old or a 19 to 25-year-old with a healthcare plan, or else they used to be in care in the same age bracket, is entitled to £1,000 per apprentice. That is paid in the first year in 2 instalments, the first of which, £500, that's split directly in 2, is after about 90 days, and the second one is at the end of 12 months. And you'll see there's a comment there, or 242 days, and that's because some apprenticeships now have a shorter duration period of 8 months. So if the completion of that apprenticeship is shorter in the 8 months, then the second payment will be paid at day 242. Now, I say roughly, and the reason I say roughly is these payments are paid directly to your training provider, and they have to then on pay to the employer. So it's usually within about 30 days of each of the end of those periods that would land in an employee's bank account. We have transaction reports run every month, so we can check whether you're on a payment run to understand that. But that's open £1,000 for a 16 to 18-year-old or the other criteria mentioned above, to any organisation, be them levy paying or not. There is just a comment here, as you'll see as well, that any levy paying organisation that does not fully utilise their levy pot can donate up to 50% of that towards other organisations to support in their funding and their training costs for apprenticeships. Joe from LCR will talk very much more about that. And what I would say is, because there is a new stipulation now that those funds that are paid into the apprenticeship levy are utilised within a 12-month period, there is, I would suspect, and Joe will maybe be able to concur, that there will be more pot to go at, because organisations don't always run through that levy pot. The larger organisations, Amazon, BBC and the like. Okay, so can we move on, Andy, please? So there are an additional couple of incentives that the government have launched. Now, we're all scratching our heads as to the timeframes on some of these, and you'll see what I mean when we come to the third in the line here, which is the £2,000 SME hiring payment. We're all a bit befuddled as to why this has been set for October, because most people possibly will be familiar that a lot of our courses start in September. Now, the stipulation with this is a new hiring incentive of £2,000, and it's available to anyone that you take on between the ages of 16 and 24. So it has a higher end age bracket. They have to be employed on or beyond July 2026. So they can be employed from July, but the incentive only becomes available for access from October. What that means is that we will put start dates for anyone who is an employer that has an apprentice in this category to access that grant as the 1st of October onwards, to allow you to access that grant. Now, this will affect predominantly any organisations that have areas in the construction or engineering trades, perhaps, where we will have their start dates a couple of weeks beyond what they would ordinarily be. That doesn't mean that they can't be employed and paid at the relevant national minimum wage up until they are enrolled as an apprentice on the 1st of October. So if you've got queries around that, please do either add them in the chat or feel free to email the business unit email address and we'll clarify them for you. But it's an additional grant, and these are layered grants. So you can access with a 16 to 18-year-old both the £1,000 grant and the £2,000 grant as well. But that is from the 1st of October. Those incentives, the £2,000 is a split again, 2 direct £1,000 instalments, again roughly month day 90 and at the end of the first year or 242 days. And again, this grant is paid to the training provider and then on paid to the employer. So expect roughly a month thereafter. Now, there are two other grants listed here. The £2,000 Foundation Apprenticeship Incentive. We're not currently running these at the moment as a college, but they exist and they are available. So for apprentices that are 16 to 21, and foundation apprenticeships are very much derived entry level. So they're supposed to be transitional onto then a full apprenticeship at a level 2 progression route. So 16 to 21, or that little bit older, 22 to 24, if somebody has a healthcare plan or are a care leaver or are prison leavers. Now, again, that is paid in those two instalment periods of 90 days and 242, or so 242 because it's a shorter apprenticeship, that there isn't a year period on that, apologies. And then lastly, another new incentive, which is the Youth Jobs Grant. Now, this is aimed at people who've been out of work for a period of at least 6 months, and they have to be able to verify and prove that they've been on universal credit for that minimum 6-month period. So the reason this is 18 to 24 is their expectation now is that you stay in education up to 18. So they've hit 18, they're in that age bracket of 18 to 24, and they've been unemployed for a period of 6 months or more, with proof of universal credit instalments coming into them. Then there is a £3,000 grant available to the employer in taking an individual fulfilling that criteria on. As I say, these are layered incentives. So if you had an 18-year-old hitting the £1,000 grant, the £2,000 grant, and the £3,000 grant if they've been unemployed, then you've got a £6,000 grant incentive towards that first year of training, which is when usually there is more requirement of support mentorship. So again, 2 instalments, roughly month 1 and month 3. And you'll see that says to be confirmed, and this is directly from the government website. So this is as current as it is at the moment. The Universal Credit Grant is the one that is paid directly to employers rather than coming via a provider first. So that is paid directly to the employer. Okay, so that, sorry, one last slide, Andy, on slide 5, thank you. Just a couple of other notes here as well. There is no employer national insurance contribution required for apprentices under 25. And as we've said before, 100% of the training costs for an apprenticeship is paid for by government via surplus levy funds to under 25s. Now, it would obviously beg the question if you take on somebody who's 26, because there is no upper age limit for apprenticeships anymore. So if you were to take on a more mature individual, that's absolutely fine. They can undertake an apprenticeship. There is a cost contribution of 5%. However, and that's of the total training cost, there is the support, potentially at looking of transfer of levy funds, which Joe will very much talk about later on the call. Now, the proportion of funds that levy paying employers can transfer is 50%, as we said, and I would expect that perhaps there'll be a bigger surplus pot just because the duration of being able to use that spend is now reduced from 24 to 12 months. So I'm going to hand over now to, so I can take a breath and have a drink, to Lindsay from Knowsley Council, who will talk about the accessible grants in that area. Lindsay, have you got your microphone off?
Sorry.
Sorry.
I did have it off. Thanks, Paula. Yeah, so I was just about to say I'm Lindsay from the Knowsley Apprentice, and we have a additional grant into everything Paul has just said, so you can have all of them funding and some extra. We have been supporting apprentices in Knowsley for over 18 years with businesses that don't have to be based in Knowsley, but the apprentice needs to be able to travel. So we could still look within the borough as well as on the outskirts. if you think your business is accessible from Knowsley, then we could definitely support with your recruiting an apprentice from the borough. Our contact details are on here, but if we move on to the next slide, I'll run through what the criteria is. So it's a £5,000 per apprentice grant that is payable at £500 a month for over 10 months directly to the employer to support with the wages, training costs. It's only available for the first year. You can't then have it if you've got an apprentice for 3 years. It doesn't roll on for every year. It is just a one-off per apprentice, 5,000. The employer must pay national minimum wage for the age to access this grant. So obviously, if they are 16, 17, it's the same rate for an apprentice rate as it is for a 16, 17-year-old. And for 18 to 20, it's £10.85, and the over 21s are at £12.71 an hour. We can link in with Paula's recruitment process, work quite closely with the colleges locally as well to recruit your apprentice, but they have got to come from the borough of Knowsley to be able to access this additional grant. As I say, it doesn't affect any of the ones that Paula has spoken about, and again, there's no employer in NI contributions if the apprentice is under 25. Also, as Paula said, there is no upper age limit for our grant either. You've just got to pay them at minimum wage, and then we could look at levy transfer, which again Joe will go about, and linking in with the college. So we'll just ask that you advertise the vacancy through us, so then all applications would come through us, mainly so we can postcode check, which is why we asked for this to be done. But we do then offer a free recruitment service, support with all interviews and any sort of link ups with the college and things like that. So if you would be interested, then our details are there. Please just feel free to give us a shout or put a comment in the chat and we'll pick it up afterwards. Thank you.
Hi, I think this is my bit. I'm Gemma from CITB. We are the Construction Industry Training Board. And I'm going to tell you about another grant that's available to you if you are CITB registered. If you're not yet CITB registered, I'll cover that in a second, but the grants themselves are the attendance grant and the achievement grants. They're two completely separate grants. The attendance grant works out at £2,500 per year of training. So if you hire a joiner for 2 years, you get £5,000 worth of grant in total for the time they're in their training. That is paid as in instalments of £625 every 13 weeks. And then at the end, when you've got a certificate to show that they've achieved, you can claim a one-off payment of £3,500, which is the achievement grant. So these grants are available to anybody who's registered with CITB, no matter the size of the business. It doesn't matter if you're an apprenticeship levy paying company or not. They're available for however many apprentices you take on onto eligible courses. So for CITB, eligible courses are anything in construction apart from gas and plumbing and electricity. So everything else, you've got your joiners, your property maintenance operatives. Paula can fill in other courses that they're currently offering that cover that. But when it comes to registering with CITB, one of the things that's largely misunderstood is the fact that there is a CITB levy and it can come with the cost. But if you're a small company and your payroll costs are actually under 150,000, then you don't have to pay the levy and you can still access the grants. So that's the bit where a lot of people are under the impression it will cost them to access grants, and it just won't. This gives you a full breakdown. It's not an easy case of just saying how much it would cost to register with CITB. There are 3 different levels. Under 150,000, you don't have to pay the levy. Between 150,000 and 500,000, there's a 50% reduction, and you only pay the full CITB levy costs if you're over 500,000 on your payroll bill each year. And as you can see from the slide, that's worked out as 0.35% of anything on PAYE and 1.25% of CIS costs. So we do have a tool on our website to help you look into that and see what it would cost you. It's called a levy calculator. The link on the slide should work. So when they're sent out to you, you should be able to just click through that. But yeah, regardless, if you are registered with us, if you think you might be registered with us, then please contact me. If you'd like to talk through the implications of registering a little bit more, then you can absolutely have a no obligation conversation with me. All my details are on the slides, so please get in touch.
This is me, I think. Afternoon all.
On the
So I'm Joe
classic,
Keegan.
yeah. Classic, turn my microphone off. Hi, Joe.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Paula. So I'm Joe Keegan. I'm the employer brokerage manager at the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. If you don't know what that is, basically we sit sort of between local authority and government, powers through devolution and certain responsibilities around things like skills and employment. So we cover all of the 6 local authorities across the city region. Basically what we do is we provide impartial advice and guidance to employers around skills and training and apprenticeships, specifically looking at how they can recruit. We have a portal called Be More, which has all of the localized vacancies on it. So individuals can access that and see which vacancies are available across the city region. So you've heard Paula mention the levy, and you're probably a bit had a number of mentions of levy, and obviously there's the CITB levy. This is the apprenticeship levy. So that started in 2017, and the government said that, as Paula says, you know, everybody with a pay bill of more than £3 million needs to pay into that levy fund. What we found was, and certainly is continues to be the case, that lots of larger employers aren't using that levy, and they have an opportunity to transfer it out to other employers who may have to pay that co-investment, that 5%, or in some cases, if they are a levy payer and they drop into non-levy because they've used all the levy money, 25% going forward. And I'll give you an example of that. We recently supported Camel-Aids. You might know the big shipbuilder on the Wirral, and they were looking to recruit 30 apprentices in the likes of platers and welders and things like that. And they were going to drop out of their levy because they'd used all their levy money. And if they were then taking on new apprentices, they would have to pay 25% co-investment. So levy payers are penalised, or those levy payers that are just tipping into levy and then coming out of levy are penalised by government because of that. So rather than pay that 25%, they came to us, and we found some employers, some levy payers that would pay the costs of that plus the costs of the training. So 100% of the training cost is paid by a levy payer and transferred across. Since we started doing this, we've facilitated about £18 million worth of levy money that's moved from larger employers, the likes of Amazon, BBC, Matalan, QVC, the football clubs, Liverpool and Everton, just started with Everton over the last month, Airbus UK, whole range of them, about 31 of them, national, sometimes, you know, multinational organisations willing to gift into the city region, which is great news for us, because if we hadn't got involved, and others hadn't got involved, and the college does a bit themselves, and others do this sort of activity as well, then all of that money would have gone to Treasury. It would have been recovered after 24 months, and as Paula mentioned, it's now going to be 12 months. So it would have been lost to the city region. So the Metro Mayor is really keen that we keep it all in the city region where we can. When we got our new Prime Minister, maybe Mr. Andy Burnham, maybe there's a different conversation about whether we get hold of the levy to look after ourselves and to distribute, but maybe that's for the future. Who knows what's going to happen. But yeah, essentially we're looking to support employers with apprenticeships and with training, and we do have other pots of money that we can direct employers to, like Adult Skills Fund and obviously skills boot camps you may have heard of. So lots of information around apprenticeships, lots of new incentives. There's other things coming through like Jobs Guarantee, which is 6 months' wages being paid in the future for anybody who's been on universal credit for more than 18 months and is 18 to 21. So there's different pots coming out all the time, different ways that government is trying to incentivise employers to take on apprentices and to recruit NEETs, those not in education, employment and training, who tend to be 16 to 24 is the focus. The key thing for me is that you've got there on that slide the QR code. So that will take you through to our Be More page, which gives you more information about us and about how we can help you potentially with levy transfer. We do clearly work with all of our local providers. We do have some what we call gaps in provision. So sometimes we can't find a local provider to deliver what employers need. And in that case, we might have to go a little bit further afield, but we want as much as we can to work with local providers. And we run events as well ourselves, and we're keeping people up to date, certainly employers up to date about new things that are coming through to support them. That might be incentives, that might be other things as well. So the slides are there, and my contact details are the contact details of the team you can find through that QR code. Thanks for that.
Brilliant, thank you, Joe. Yeah, so all of the contact details of all of the speakers that have joined us today will be on the slides, or as Joe's case has got the current up-to-date QR code, just showing off. So any questions? I think there was a question that came through in the chat, which I'll just have a look in a second. But if you do think of anything, quite often you know, drop off the call and then think of something, then please do contact us on that business unit email address that's been shared. We will share the slide deck so that you've got all of that information that we've been through today. But if there is something that isn't covered or you think about after the event, then obviously please get in touch. And the referrals to all of the partners that have been on the call are there for you too. So I hope that has been useful. I know it's really quite complex, and you know, that's coming from somebody who's been in the industry now for 10+ years, and there's probably many more years between us on the call that we've been in this education sector or apprenticeships, and it can be quite complex, but know that there is support there. And you know, our aim is to help match skills gaps with funding and with recruitment and support and that whole wraparound service. So thank you all for joining. I'll just have a quick look at the question just to know more about the Knowsley grant. So Gemma, you will be getting a call. So I'm not sure whether that's the confusion of Gemma and Knowsley, but either Gemma or Lindsay expect a call.
No, it's fine. I know that what that's about. That's yeah, I'm free all day tomorrow. I wanted to add as well with our grant, I want to make sure that there's no urgency in it. I think the nice thing about the CITB grants is that you can apply within 12 months of the start date. So it's deal with the enrollment, deal with the other grants, and I'm happy to be last on the list.
Yeah, you've not got the same time constraints quite as much.
Definitely not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining. We'll conclude and turn off the recording now. And thanks again to the partners that have joined. I'm sure we'll probably plan another session in before the year is out as things emerge, and maybe we have a change of government, as you say, in terms of who's leading the chase. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Paula.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.